The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Defendant entered the residence, went to the third floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Caitlin Gonzalez. He encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
Did Killer Kohberger have a pattern? The convicted murderer investigated for an eerily similar crime before the Idaho student murders happened. Plus, the mystery around what happened to Amy Bradley is intensifying, now getting attention from celebrities like Kim Kardashian. Also this hour, a Jeffrey Epstein accuser is speaking out, urging the federal government to release the files and for convicted sex offender Ghislaine Maxwell to stay behind bars. And the defense in the dismembered wife murder trial, pointing the finger at a mystery man. So who is this Jim McIntyre guy? And could he tip the scales of justice in the case against defendant Nicholas Casotis? It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Thursday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. This is the show that I like to call Coffee and Court. It's morning time. We get you all warmed up and ready to go for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. We got a big day and a big show before things get underway. So grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. No deal for Mama Donna. That is the latest straight from the state attorney's office in Florida, clearing up the rumors about an offer being extended to Donna Adelson. The state attorney's office says that no plea offer was made. Well then, the Adelsons better buckle up because Mama Donna is going to trial. And when trial starts, it'll likely mean more messiness for South Florida's infamous family. Because the state may call the Adelson kids to testify against Mama Donna. My gosh, this is going to be incredible. I wonder how Charlie is feeling now that he's been behind bars for a while. You know, prison can make you bitter. Is he going to turn on Mommy or his sister? And what about the other Adelson brother, the good sibling? My heart goes out to him. What's he going to say? He's got to be disgusted. If I were him, I'd pretend I didn't know the rest of them. And finally, the woman who stood to gain the most from Dan Markel's murder, the Tom Hagen of the Adelson family, the ex-wife who was losing the custody battle with Dan Markel. You guessed it. I'm talking about why hasn't she been charged, Wendy? That's right. She keeps falling into the pile of mud and coming out with a new brown suit. A cloud of suspicion around her every time, but no charges. However, I think that's going to change soon, my friends. I predict that something's going to happen at Donna's trial that's going to make why hasn't she been charged yet, Wendy, the next Adelson to be forced to trade in their country club membership for a cozy spot in the county jail. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
He thought he could outrun us, but he was wrong.
Just after 8:00 a.m., we received multiple calls of sightings of the suspect. Placing resources there immediately resulted in an additional citizen's call at about 8:57 a.m. We took advantage of that quickly evolving situation and made the arrest at 9:05 a.m. We find some peace in knowing that the suspect is no longer a threat, but remain committed to the families, the community, and to justice.
In Tennessee, the murder suspect who's accused of killing 4 family members is in court this morning. Defendant Austin Drummond has his arraignment scheduled for 9 a.m. Eastern. Court TV will be there for it, and we'll bring it to you when it's underway. And in Georgia, we've got the state's case resuming in the dismembered wife murder trial for defendant Nicholas Casones. Court's going to start up at 9 a.m. in that one as well. And in Montana, closing arguments expected today in the returned mail murder trial for defendant Jordan Palmer. That's going to start up at noon Eastern. Right now, though, let's turn to our top story as we have more information to share with you about Bryan Kohberger. We're learning that police investigated the convicted killer for an eerily similar break-in a year before the Idaho student murders. The incident happening back in October of 2021 in Pullman, Washington, the same weekend that Washington State University's criminology department was hosting an event for incoming students. The location of the break-in just 10 miles away from the Idaho 4 murders. Now, like the Idaho student murders, this was an attack that happened in the middle of the night at an off-campus home where 4 college females were living. The intruder wore a ski mask and had a knife when he broke into the residence. Both Kohberger and that suspect in that case entered the residence through an unlocked back door. The suspect in this unsolved case positioned himself at the foot of the bed, unaware that the female was awake, at which point the female kicked him and kicked him hard, good for her, in the stomach, and then he fled the scene. Boy, oh boy, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? We do know that Killer Kohberger's investigation was brief, and it was shut down when police learned that there was no record of him attending school events or being near the area at the time. But it does make you wonder, was there a possible pattern with this guy? Let's bring in our expert guests and talk about this. Criminology expert, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman is with us, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael J. Brown is with us as well. Good morning to you both. Dr. Debbie, do you think this could have been Bryan Kohberger?
100%, Julie. The fact patterns are so similar, and as you suggest, eerily so. And there's just no coincidence, Julie, when it comes to murder. These individuals, meaning serial and mass murderers, they're very consistent with their patterns. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. We always start there. So as you said at the introduction, the victimology pattern is very similar. We have a young female college student in her bedroom at or near 3:30 a.m., encounters this intruder with a knife, and we know the fact pattern at 1122 King Road. I feel very strongly that this individual was at both places, and it's pretty consistent, Julie, even as we look at other high-profile individuals of this classification, you know, the Bundys, the Dahmers, Rader, Gacy. At some point, they have participated in what they all think will be the perfect murder, but something gets thwarted, something doesn't go well. So now they vacillate between panic and perfection in their minds. They want the crime to be perfect, but in so doing, and thankfully this young lady was so brave and bold to have kicked him and disrupted him and ultimately saved her life.
Oh, you're so right. Boy, I love your analysis, Dr. Debbie. I'm sure many people out there watching the show right now do as well. Our Cordy family is very suspicious of this guy, and you've had suspicions about him all along. You know, when you said how meticulously that crime was carried out, it makes you wonder, was that his first rodeo? This crime is still unsolved, this October 2021 home invasion crime. Michael J. Brown, this is where we want to turn to you for your legal expertise. So let's say somebody who worked this case is thinking, you know what, I'm watching court TV this morning, I'm thinking maybe I, no, you know, but anyways, I'm thinking maybe I go talk to Kohberger in the jail. Legally, can they do that? Would you talk to us about, let's say a police detective wants to go see him and wants to question him. Would you kind of take us to law school, Michael J. Brown? What needs to happen here, please?
Great question, Julie. Good morning. The issue really is going to depend on that particular state. You know, right to counsel has attached, but it depends on each state's ruling. This is Idaho. So some states say if you have a current attorney on a case, you need that attorney's going to cover you on any investigation, and then you need to have him waive his right to counsel. On the other hand, if it's an unrelated case, and technically this is the convictions for a murder of 4 young students, that case is resolved. So this is an unrelated case. Then he's game, and certainly they can go in and question him. But I would expect that his attorneys would have put the authorities on notice once his name was circulated, so that he is what we call lawyered up or protected, and they would have to go through those attorneys in order to have any type of conversation.
We knew you would have an answer for us. Michael J. Brown, thank you for that. Dr. Debbie, I'm going to ask you to give us kind of an educated guess based on all your training and years of experience and teaching in academia with criminology. When we think about what it takes for someone like Kohberger to commit crimes like this, and how far before the crimes might he been thinking about this or contemplating it? I'm curious if you have any opinion on when things went from, okay, he was just a student and in academia and trying to be like you, although he failed, when it went from that to, oh, I want to kill, and I want to kill badly and hurt a lot of people.
Right. It's an excellent question, Julie. And I do think at some point he was on the pathway of potentially having the knowledge-based interest to become a professor. But again, he was failing in 2 categories. He was failing professionally. He was fired from his role as the teaching assistant. He could not establish the rapport with the students, no demeanor, no decorum. So that bothered him immensely, I'm sure, because that was the one thing he really prided himself on, his intellect and his knowledge. And then the second aspect of life, he was failing personally. We don't know if he had a platonic friend, let alone the intimate relation. And I think that's what happened, Julie. So I would submit that it now potentially had been years that he was giving it thought, consideration. I do think with circumstance 1, that was his first attempt. He failed. And then we have in criminology, Julie, what's called a cooling off period. In many instances, these attempted killers, if it doesn't go well the first time, they cool off for a period of time. So we were looking now at potentially a year or so. But I do think he had given this careful consideration, planning, premeditation, purposeful, potentially for years.
Dr. Debbie, I really hope you write a book about this case. I mean that sincerely. Thank you for all of that. This guy, perhaps during the cooling off period, maybe that was when all the bad driving was occurring, I don't know, but it seems like he's had so many traffic stops, and that's the only time we get to get a look at him. Let's go back to August of 2022 in Moscow, so we're talking just a few months before the homicides, which were November of 22. Here we go.
Hey there. I stopped you going a little fast. You didn't realize this is 35?
Oh, it's 35?
It is, yeah. So you're going
about 41?
Yeah. Were you wearing your seatbelt when I stopped you? No.
Just for future reference, I mean, I'm obviously an honest person, right? I told you I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. When people lie to you about that, say I lied to you about that, right? Just for my own knowledge. Honestly, go back and look at that.
Okay, Michael J. Brown, you have seen a lot of people in your career. You're a high-profile criminal defense attorney now. You were a prosecutor before that. Tossing a question at you here. Let's say Kohberger reaches out to you and is concerned and is saying, look, I'm concerned that I have other crimes. There was this incident back in October. Again, we don't know if it was him. We don't know, but I'm just saying, just for the sake of our analysis. Let's say he reaches out to you, an attorney. How might you advise him? What might he do then if he's saying, I'm concerned somebody's going to want to come and speak to me in the jail today about this and I don't want to talk to them?
Julie, you know, at the end of the day, there's really no harm in him being prosecuted. He's already received 4 life sentences. So this other charge really has unfortunately no impact, even if he's convicted and prosecuted, because he's going to serve the rest of his life in jail. Now, having said that, if he reaches out, you know, he seems, and I think Dr. Debbie would probably confirm this, a very narcissistic person who probably wants to take credit and claim that that incident and maybe some other incidences he's responsible for, and he wants to tell the world. Now, if he wants to do that, obviously from a legal standpoint, it's all right, we want to clear up these cases so you don't have to worry about them, and you can serve your sentence. I don't want to use the word in peace, but you can just move on. If that's his MO, then yes, certainly. There is no harm in doing it. Nothing further, unfortunately, can happen to him because he has this life sentence. And really, it's good for the victims and the community if he actually gives them closure in the sense that he's the person responsible. They can rest easy at night.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that, Michael. You're right. You would hope these victims could get closure, and especially those students, who, I mean, they're, I'm sure, living in terror. The fact that this happened in their house, it was never solved. They don't know who's behind bars. Could somebody come in at any moment, do it again? Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. In dovetailing off of what you said, Michael, about him being narcissistic, I agree with you. Dr. Debbie, a final word to you. Do you see narcissism with this character?
Absolutely. I agree with you and Michael, Julie. We've gone through the exhaustive list of the dismal characteristics that he has, starting with, I believe he's a psychopath, narcissistic, grandiose, manipulative, but again, very obsessive compulsive, as many of these serial killers and mass murderers are. They obsess about it. And I'm sure as we speak, he is literally in his maximum security prison cell thinking about all of the colossal errors he made in this case, and he'll be thinking about it for a lifetime.
Oh, boom. Drop the mic. Let's sure hope so. Dr. Debbie Goodman, we have to let you get off to class. Thank you so much for the lesson this morning. We always love your insight. We'll see you soon. Michael J. Brown's coming with us. Do the same at home, please. We got a great show ahead after the break. Here's what's coming up.
Obviously, losing my sister has been really tough and emotional, and but watching my parents go through that was some of the hardest stuff.
The Amy Bradley mystery is gaining celebrity attention. Her brother is asking Kim K for some help in the 30-year unsolved case. And a Jeffrey Epstein victim speaking out, urging the government to release the files.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Obviously, losing my sister has been really tough and emotional, and but watching my parents go through that was some of the hardest stuff. And even to this day, certain topics of conversation, it's a wrap with the emotions.
Now for what's trending in true crime, the brother of Amy Bradley. Amy's the woman who vanished from a cruise ship back in 1998. And her brother, Brad Bradley, is hoping that superstar Kim Kardashian can help find his sister. So he reached out to Kim and to music superstar Rihanna for some help, hoping the star's fame and influence will help locate his sister. Now, Rihanna is from Barbados, which is near the area where Amy vanished. And Kim K watched the Netflix doc and told her fans that it was, quote, mind-blowing and a, quote, must-see. And her post also said, quote, we must find Amy. This is so crazy, at Netflix. Now, Brad fired off a direct TikTok message to Kim K asking for her help, raising some awareness about the case, writing, quote, the FBI agents in charge of Amy's case dropped the ball from day one and have been sitting on their hands for years and years. Amy deserves justice. Please help us. Now, we haven't seen a response yet from Kim, but could the celebrity's influence help solve the case? Let's ask our power panel that question. Let's bring back in. Here we go. I'm welcoming all new guests here. I'm so sorry. I'm Attorney John Phillips, a celebrity attorney, with us. Also, I have with me retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer and Professor and retired NYPD Detective Mike Alcazar. Good morning to you all. All right, so new leads coming in, according to the Bradley family, new tips coming in. Brad Bradley has said people have sent emails, photos that they think could possibly be Amy. The family's of the opinion she was trafficked. She was somehow put into a human trafficking situation, taken off of that ship and held in Curacao, at least for a time. Now, Can these celebrities help do anything at this point? What do we think? Mike Alcazar, would you start us off, please?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the Netflix show definitely brought more attention to this cold case. And with Kim Kardashian and Rihanna jumping on board with their millions of followers, there's no doubt in my mind that our internet sleuths, our web detectives, will be a good source of information that they could provide for investigators. So, yeah, I think it would definitely help.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Jennifer Coffindeffer, to you next, please. Thoughts on these celebrities? Can they do anything in your view?
Well, I think what they can do is just bring more exposure, right? More people are going to know about this case than knew about it before. They can also use their influence to sort of incite public interest in the case. So I think those are the two items they can bring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Maybe some comfort to the family. You know, I'm sure it's going to be comforting. So many people reaching out concerned about this woman. John Phillips, last to answer the question, but certainly not least on the panel, your thoughts on the celebs, please.
You know, I've been through this. So when Tiger King came out, ultimately Don Lewis's family hired me, and he was missing. And we did something similar and actually did a kind of a commercial during Carol Baskin's Dancing with the Stars. Like, you know what happened to Don Lewis? And the calls we got are kind of match what the stories have said here. There's some crazy, profound things, a bunch of lookalikes. And so you do get an overabundance of leads that you got to sort through, and you got to have a team that's going to do it. And that requires resources, which is why you reach out to Kim Kardashian and people with influence and money to kind of help steer, you know, an investigation. And certainly, I don't know how many times Joe Exotic's reached out to Kim Kardashian for her help. You know, because she's affiliated with the law and wants to be a lawyer. I know she's kind of a logical one, and she obviously is one of the most influential, you know, social media people that we have going right now.
Yeah, definitely an influencer, that is for sure. Yeah, you know, she really has aligned herself as somebody who cares about crime and justice, and she has her causes she takes up. I'll be curious to see what, if anything, comes next for her. And so, talking about what we think may have happened here, you know, everybody's got an opinion. We're debating things in our newsroom here at Court TV Network. So would love to ask all of you on the Power Panel for your opinions as to what you think happened to Amy Bradley. Mike Alcazar, let me go back to you. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the documentary, it's definitely a lot of things that could have happened, right? First of all, it was multi-jurisdictional, so it was difficult to preserve the crime scene, if there was a crime scene, because, you know, they cleaned up the cabin and then they weren't able to investigate until they pulled into a port and the FBI stepped on board. So, you know, the family seems to be adamant that they don't believe it's a suicide or an accidental, you know, falling off the deck. So is it possible that she was drugged and then escorted out of the boat, possibly by that guy Yellow? 100%. So we know human trafficking happens a lot in these countries, and then, you know, we don't have jurisdiction over there. So it was so much time lapsed that I feel like, yes, investigators kind of like responded poorly and not timely. And, you know, and there was, you know, they didn't, you know, do proper surveillance. So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, I think she possibly could have been a victim of human trafficking.
Detective, really appreciate that. Thank you. Agent Coffindeffer, I want to go to you next for your opinion. And also a little known fact about you. I just learned that you did a detail in the Virgin Islands. You had a special assignment there when you were serving in the FBI. So you know what it's like to work a case and be in someone else's jurisdiction. And what's that like? Would you kind of talk to us about that and also share your opinions on what you think may have happened here, please?
Yes, well, first of all, a lot of people don't know that the FBI has jurisdiction over crimes that happen on planes, trains, and automobiles. So it doesn't matter whether it's drug-related or something like this, a missing person case. I worked many of these cases, and I'll tell you, while I was there were so many leads on Natalie Holloway. And you just see these pouring in, you know, that she was cited and somebody saw her. And it reminds me so much of this case. Look, when I look at the facts, that table being pulled over to the edge right near the railing, the fact that her shoes were quote unquote placed neatly there, and the information about her wanting to sort of beat the ship ashore. The fact she had had, I believe, 7 drinks that night, and those are just the ones that they could trace to her credit card, not ones that she might have been given, you know, a shot here or there, something like that. The fact that none of the cameras on the ship, and there were cameras, never picked up any activity like somebody struggling or smuggling somebody off or her walking off. Those all lead me to believe that she either voluntarily went over maybe to beat that ship to shore, but that she was not taken, most likely.
I really appreciate that insight, Jennifer. Yeah, there were some other things that came out in the documentary that Amy Bradley had just come out as gay, and it just touched on this. It didn't really belabor the point, but said that her parents weren't happy about that. And there was a point where there was an interview done with a woman who was in a relationship with her, and there was a problem, and Amy Bradley had written her this, it was a message in a bottle, literally a message in a bottle. And when my view, I'm watching that just as, you know, look an outsider thinking, oh gosh, could this have been somewhat of a suicide note? Who knows? It seems like there was some sadness and heaviness to that message. So, you know, to those folks who think she may have gone overboard for whatever reason, suicide, accident, whatever it was, who knows? John Phillips, would you take us home here? Looking at the facts, looking at what you've seen, read about this case so far, what's your theory on what happened to Amy Bradley?
Human trafficking can certainly happen any place, anywhere, anytime, and we need to treat it like that. That said, it is extremely rare for it to happen on board a ship. There's just too many control factors that happen. You would expect it to happen once it ported. And kind of like the former agent said, there's just a lot there that kind of point to other factors. But if you're the family, you want answers, and you have suspicions, and you don't want to believe, you know, that this was suicide or some sort of accident. And there's, I haven't seen the documentary, but, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that points to other things, and Netflix is really good at doing that. So, you know, I don't know. And I grieve for the family. And certainly if you're dealing with depression, please seek help.
Yes, John, I love all those points you made. You're right. You know, we see a documentary and it's really hard to form an opinion just based on that, what we're served up, you know, and when there's so much more out there, I'm sure we have no idea about. And you're right, this family, of course, they're going to want to keep that hope going and hope that someday she'll come back home to them. We all wish that happens. Every good wish to the family, and we're certainly going to report any updates we get with this case. A big thank you to this amazing power panel this morning. Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, Detective Mike Alcazar, thank you both so much. I know we need to let you two go. And John Phillips is coming with us. We're grateful for that, and for you at home. Here's what's coming up next.
I'm tired of the government saying that they want to release him. So please just do it. Ghislaine Maxwell should not be pardoned. She was convicted of sex trafficking of children. This is a terrible crime.
An Epstein victim speaking out and reacting to the latest legal moves in the investigation. And will the jury buy the mystery man defense in the dismembered wife murder trial?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
The battle to learn the truth of what really happened by releasing the files is now in the news almost every day. While the political class takes sides in this battle, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are often ignored, and the toll that this is taking on them emotionally is often just a footnote rather than a focus of many stories.
As the tea leaves seem to point to a possible deal between the government and Ghislaine Maxwell, victims of Jeffrey Epstein are speaking out and asking for more transparency. Now this, as top White House officials were reportedly set to meet with Vice President J.D. Vance about an Epstein strategy as they're considering releasing the transcripts of the recent DOJ interview with Maxwell. Some of those victimized by Epstein may be concerned about the handling of the records, while others are wondering what Maxwell had to say in that sit-down.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure if we can even believe her. But, I mean, I would like to know what the U.S. Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, asked her and what she actually said to him. It's very upsetting to me, and I cry with tears like I am now in my living room watching this all the time when I see it on the news every day. Jeffrey's in my brain, and I see him again and again, and I remember what he did to me in that hotel room. And I feel pain in my heart for myself and all for the other victims everywhere.
Oh my gosh, my heart goes out to her and all of the victims. And you know, in this program, we always like to remember the victims. How might they be feeling with all of this, with a lack of justice with Jeffrey Epstein? And now questions about whether Ghislaine Maxwell is going to get some kind of a deal. Well, let's bring in an advocate who is representing 11 Epstein accusers, attorney Eric Fudali. Eric, good morning to you. It's wonderful to see you, and you're fighting a tough fight for these people, as you know. Talk to us, please, about what it's like for them.
You know, it's frustrating. It's disheartening because this is not just what's happening right now. This has been a pattern that's been going on for decades. The victims continue to be disregarded. They continue to be disrespected. They continue to be forgotten. Beginning in the 90s, of course, with this FBI sham investigation that didn't lead anywhere. The 2008 nonsense sweetheart deal from Alex Acosta that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to continue to abuse. Then, of course, he's finally arrested. The victim thinks, okay, there's going to be justice, and he's somehow allowed to miraculously kill himself in federal custody. Then, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell. You have to remember, she's the one person who has actually met justice, been held accountable for the crimes. And now she's getting a cushy transfer to a club-fed type prison, and now there's even talks of a pardon. I mean, it's just one thing after another for these victims, and all they want is closure and justice.
Yes, they more than deserve it. Eric, with Epstein's death, however that went down, you know, for people who believe it was a homicide, you know, and the people who believe it was suicide, however it went down, he's dead. Is there any money available, even at this point, for these victims to get something, to get some kind of financial compensation? I know it doesn't take away the pain, take away the trauma. I understand that. I wish there could be more punishment for him. But is there anything left to attack in terms of assets?
Well, so fortunately, when Jeffrey Epstein passed away, there was a fund that was created to go to the, quote unquote, it's supposed to all go to the victims. I have some issues with how that was laid out, and of course, where all the money went. I think every single penny Jeffrey Epstein has ever earned should go to the victims. So the victims have been able to get some sort of compensation. Certainly not nearly enough to ever account for what they went through, the years and years of abuse, and the years and years of fear from Jeffrey Epstein. That's something I think also gets lost in this, is this just wasn't, sexual abuse of these vulnerable young women. This was also, he would instill fear and intimidation, brag about his powerful friends, about his power, he could, what he could do to them. And that also, I think, is forgotten. These women not only were abused, but they've lived in fear of Mr. Epstein and his associates, even beyond the grave.
Yeah, that's a great point, Eric, living in fear. Yeah, I'm sure it's just very haunting for all of the victims that you've been helping through this process. I'm happy to hear they've gotten something. They deserve far more because, money doesn't take away trauma. It might help with things in life, and we're grateful for that, but it doesn't remove the trauma, as you know. You've been a prosecutor before going to the private sector and doing all the work you do. Tell me, when it comes to these transcripts of the interview that Todd Blanche did with Maxwell recently in the prison, how do your clients feel about that? Do they want the transcripts to be public?
What we don't want, what I certainly don't want, what my clients and those victims I spoke to don't want, is they don't want to give Ghislaine Maxwell a platform. she doesn't deserve a platform to talk about what she wants to do, which is why there's no interest really in having her testify in front of Congress. Now, I'd like to see the transcript to see if the DOJ actually challenged her, if it was more like a cross-examination, or if it was more just giving her a voice, trying to clear certain names, letting her tell a story, and, focusing on the people that they want to exonerate, right? If there's an actual real cross-examination type interview where they're challenging her and getting to the bottom of, what she knows and what happened, I'd certainly be somewhat interested in releasing that. Again, I'm all for the most exposure as possible, as long as it's not at the expense of the victims or giving Ms. Maxwell any sort of, special treatment. But I would like to see, what actually happened, what she actually spoke about, without giving Ms. Maxwell a platform to talk about, because she's never taken accountability for what she did. Also, you have to remember, she's been accused of perjury. So, you have to take everything she's saying with a grain of salt. I'm for the most exposure as possible, but I really don't want Ms. Maxwell to have sort of a platform, or the DOJ really to have a platform to try to, tell their side of the story or focus the conversation on what they want to be revealed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you're saying, Eric. Yeah, fair enough, right? I mean, because if she was queen for a day, we know in that interview, and we don't know how tough it was. Last question before we have to let you go for now. I hope we can continue the conversation, Eric, but there's some talk at this point about Deputy AG Todd Blanche, the one who did the interview, possibly going on Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about it. How do your clients feel about that?
It's just more of this political circus that's been surrounding. I keep saying that the victims are being forgotten. I would even go as far as say the victims are being exploited and re-victimized by this political theater, this political circus that's been happening. And I really just wish they could finally get some true justice and some true closure.
I know you do. Eric Fidali, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. We'll hope to have you back very soon, and please keep us posted with any developments you may hear before we do. Take care. And still ahead here on Opening Statements.
The man calling himself Jim McIntyre appears. Now, Jim McIntyre claims to be with the FBI, and Jim McIntyre tells Mr. Casotis, tells Mindy that they're in danger.
So did Jim McIntyre do it? Could the mystery man tip the scales of justice? We'll talk about it next.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Now for what's tipping the scales of justice. Who is the mystery man in the dismembered wife murder trial? Defendant Nicholas Casotis is a decorated Navy JAG and respected lawyer. He's accused of murdering and dismembering his second wife, Mindy. The defense team is claiming that the couple was actually on the run after an FBI agent named Jim McIntyre told them they were in danger and to trust no one. The defense laid out their theory in their open.
You'll hear testimony that a man calling himself Jim McIntyre, who knows if that is his real name, claiming to be with the FBI, told them that their lives were in danger, that they had to disappear, follow orders without question, and trust no one, not their family, not their friends, not their loved ones.
It's important to know the prosecution agrees the couple was on the run, but for a different reason from the defendant's first wife, because he owed her $1.5 million, a divorce judgment. Let's bring in our Legal Eagles attorneys, Michael J. Brown and John Phillips. All right, Michael, do you like this mystery man defense?
I don't know what to say. I think that McIntyre is hanging out with the tooth fairy, Julie. I don't know. I'd love to see this trial. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see how they present this evidence. Listen, it's a circumstantial case, but circumstantial, as we all know, doesn't mean weak. There are strong circumstantial cases and there are weak circumstantial cases. They have a lot of evidence here that is circumstantial. They have him buying a similar weapon, the Tubbs. They have a motive in terms of the affair. They have him drive, or they have the vehicle days before her body was found, and then they have dismemberment, scattering of the body. So there's a lot going on there. Circumstantial, yes, very strong circumstantial case.
Michael, love what you said about the Tooth Fairy. The Tooth Fairy and Jim McIntyre might be friends. I'm with you. John Phillips, what do you say? Do you like this mystery man defense?
It just so happens I have Jim McIntyre's entire file right here, and I'm going to point to the key evidence. Oh, nope, that's the Tooth Fairy's file. Sorry. Yeah, you just look for reasonable doubt. And so in cases where there's a $1.5 million divorce judgment, you do have spouses that hire investigators to go try to find somebody. And that person, whether real or pretend, seems to be named Jim McIntyre. But, certainly you have private investigators, including just fly-by-night, folks that would be trying to chase down this couple. But this one's going to be wild. It's right upstairs in our sweet state of Georgia. So I might even have to go watch some of this one.
Oh, yeah, for sure, John, when you can. Michael, tell me, what does this do to prosecutors? Do they pay attention to this defense theory? What would you do?
Well, here's the problem. From a defense standpoint, they gave it all up. And instead of letting this thing go and then interjecting things and being very vague in their opening statement, they're already committed to this McIntyre defense. They don't know what's going to necessarily come out on the prosecution's case in chief. So going to your question, Julie, the prosecution is going to tee off on this McIntyre theory, and if it's not believable and credible, which I don't know what's to come, what's going to happen is they're going to throw it in the face of the defense. And in their closing statement, they are going to say, hey, they didn't have an obligation. They put this before you. Do you believe anything they say? You shouldn't believe anything they say. And then they'll focus on the circumstantial evidence, nail each issue that they have, and then bring it home.
Michael, thank you. John Phillips, what do you think the likelihood is that Jim McIntyre is going to be called as a witness by the defense?
I'm confused about whether Jim McIntyre and the Tooth Fairy are synonymous, but I don't see it, because there would have been some witness lists, there would have been some disclosures that would have actually led to Jim McIntyre, being a part of an investigation, one would assume, and we don't have that. So I don't know that we're going to ever find out more details about Jim McIntyre, but given the GBI's access, one would think you would. The FBI, where is he? Where did he go?
Yeah, exactly, John. And I know you both have heard the urban legend. I was telling my team about this in courthouses. We talk about it. So for this case, Michael J. Brown, do you think the prosecutor is going to stand up and say, Your Honor, we call our next witness, we call Jim McIntyre to the stand, and see who looks back at the door, and if the defendant doesn't look back, no, that would cause a mistrial. Yeah. Michael, your thoughts?
I think what's going to happen is the smartest guy in the room is the defendant. I think that's become obvious on this case, and what will happen is he will be the one to get up on the stand, talk about this Jim McIntyre, put this theory up before the jury, but he'll be subject to cross-examination. He may be the smartest guy in the room, but I don't know how he's going to fare on cross-examination.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And do we think he'll testify? John Phillips, a quick answer.
I do think he'll testify.
Yeah.
He's got to point to this divorce and kind of tie that in to give his side of the story.
Exactly. Yeah, somebody's got to tell us about Jim McIntyre if we won't have him or the Tooth Fairy in this trial. You guys are the best. John Phillips, Michael J. Brown, we got to say goodbye to you both. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.